All right. Hi. This is a live YouTube video, and I would like to talk today about Judas of Karioth. He's known as Judas Iscariot, and that apparently means of Kerioth, which is a town somewhere in the Israel area. So I was very inspired by this story. I think it's a very powerful and moving story, and I'd like to share. As many people may know, spirits are able to communicate with people on the earth. You don't die when you die, you're still alive. And Judas probably has communicated with many people, but he decided to come to someone interested in the messages, the pageant messages from someone in Washington, D.C. about a century ago. Someone who was interested in those messages, he came to and started channeling through this person. And I don't know the name of the channeler. His name, I only know him by the first initial named, which is an H. So I'm going to call the channeler Hector. I think he's from Ecuador. Yes, he's from Cuenca, Ecuador. Apologies if I say that incorrectly. So these two particular messages that I want to read today about Judas' life were recorded on the 5th and the 6th of September in 2001. So here goes. Anyone interested in the life of Judas and what really happened? This is it here. So I will simply begin here. So this first one is called Judas' Death and Passing into Spirit, recorded on the 5th of September 2001, received by Hector. Hello, my dear brother. Yesterday we could not meet. There was simply no opportunity. You need not worry about this. There was just no quiet moment. Today, I would like to initiate a series of messages which surely will interest you. We are going to make a journey together, a virtual journey, of course, and our point of departure is the temple at Jerusalem. After my treason and Jesus' arrest, the disciples almost panicked. You know the story of Peter's denials, and well, it is understandable. They were scared to death. I felt dismayed. Jesus had allowed them to take him prisoner. I saw his battered body with my own eyes when Pilate presented him to the public after the lashing, and I just did not know any longer what to think or what to do. I ran to the temple to speak with Joseph Caiaphas, but the guards would not even allow me to enter the court of the Gentiles. I implored them, but it was in vain. I took the money out of the purse and threw it onto the marble floor, where the coins tinkled, bouncing and rolling. The guards only laughed, expressing their deep scorn. And here Hector interjects, "Why did you accept the money?" And Judas says, "It was a symbolic price. The value of a slave, a ridiculous price for such an important man for the priests as Jesus was. I threw the money away. I ran out, without knowing what to do or where to go. My only friends, the apostles and disciples of the Master, would certainly hate me. They would have never understood me. The Sadducee priests scorn me. What should I do? I headed for the valley of Hinnom, seeking a steep cliff where I fastened the rope which I used as a sort of belt. The other end I put around my neck and jumped. But the rope slipped off the rock, and I fell into the abyss. I saw myself, or rather my body, as it lay lifeless on the rocky ground, with distorted members and broken and dislocated bones. I didn't feel pain, and I watched myself from outside. Somehow I had left my body. It was bright daylight, but everything seemed so dark, almost like at night. At the beginning, I didn't notice this, but after some time, I realized that there were some spirits near me. They were kind, they smiled at me, and they were so bright. And only then I became aware of the darkness, because they contrasted so much with our surroundings. I saw that I was naked, but they gave me clothes, the same kind of clothes that I used to wear, and I felt better. Finally, they signaled me to accompany them, and I did so. They took me by the hand, and I felt as if something attracted me, like some kind of suction. And suddenly, in one single instant, I was at another place. That's my mother. It was like an enormous meadow, like on earth, of green grass and flowers. It was beautiful. There were some buildings, but I never entered them. The spirits who accompanied me told me that if I wished so, I could enter one of the houses and rest there. But I didn't feel tired. I rather stayed outside, observing my surroundings. There were literally thousands of spirits, newly arrived like me, and also some who already had spent some time in this place. There were many others who took care of them and attended the needs of those newly arrived ones, like the spirits at my side. They were all brighter and very kind. Well, the situation seemed so unreal that I didn't know what to do. I wanted to return to the place where my body was, and in the same instant I was already there. I saw the deformed corpse, but I felt totally out of place. This was not I. I had nothing to do any longer with that lifeless body. What was I doing here? I felt a desire to return to the beautiful meadow, and at once I returned. My companions were awaiting me. They smiled at me, calmed me, and we sat down. They explained to me that now a new stage in my life had begun, that I had to try and forget about Earth and to adapt to my new situation. This was not so difficult a task because I had always believed in life after death, but my suicide entailed negative effects. My rash action had not given me time to get ready. I had also wanted to escape from something which was still present, my betrayal. This recollection had not faded. I still remembered it, but my companions never mentioned it. They never uttered a single word about that affair, so I calmed down a little. I cannot tell you how long I stayed at this place, because there were no changes of days and nights. There was no way to measure time, but it seemed a long time to me. I also met some of my relatives who had died some time ago. My parents and my brothers still lived on Earth because I had died at a relatively young age. The spirits who arrived were of all ages, babies, children, adolescents, adults, and old men, of all classes and races. It seems that the first part of my stay at this beautiful place of coming and going, I had spent lost in my thoughts, without noticing what was going on, because suddenly I realized that the spirits who arrived had very different appearances. Some were beautiful, others quite ordinary, but some, I'd even say many, were ugly, very ugly. Some even looked like monsters of ugliness. How strange, I thought. I had not realized that before. I began to study my hands, and they also looked ugly. Oh my! I could already feel something very serious. I asked my companions to bring me a mirror, and what I saw in the mirror took my breath away. You know, Hector, how I look like. I was not in outstanding beauty, but neither was I ugly. Ordinarily, I would say that I was happy with my appearance, but what I saw in the mirror was not I. It was an ugly face. Not as monstrous as some of those faces I had seen, but ugly, really ugly. I think I lost my emotional balance. I wanted to leave, to escape by running away. One of my companions approached me and said, "You are right, it is time to go." And he took me by my hand and left with me. That place I have just described is an entrance place for those recently deceased. There they stay for some time under the care of selected spirits, until they realize that they have really passed from earth life to spirit life. But what is more, in such places they become aware of their own condition. There, they learn to see themselves as they really are. When this happens, they are ready to proceed to their destination, the place they are fit for according to their soul condition. There are people who die in peace in a hospital. When they wake up, they believe they are in another hospital, because they find themselves in a clean room in a bed. But they are no longer in the hospital. They are already in the spirit world. The spirits try to make the passing over as easy and as non-traumatic as possible, and they are very skillful in their work. They give the first advice, they calm the newcomers, they never criticize, they always help. It is a place of temporary happiness. It is like the transit lounge of an airport. But finally, the moment comes when the spirits have to leave for the place which the law of attraction determines for them. I think that's enough for now. Write down what you have seen and what I have described for you. Next time I will continue the story, and I will describe to you my first experiences, the second station of our trip. And then Hector says, Judas, before you leave, I want to ask you a question. You spoke of your appearance on earth, and in fact, the first times I saw a young man, I don't know, 20, 25, or perhaps even 30 years old. I'm not good in guessing age, but now I see you like an older person, perhaps 45 or 50 years old, and your hair and your beard are already a little bit gray. What is happening? Yes, this is true, but my face is the same now. I mean, I have the same features, haven't I? What happens is that I wanted you to know me as I really was on earth, but I felt also that it would cause you problems to accept advice from a man younger than you. That is a very common human defect. Since we can present ourselves as we deem it opportune, you see me now older, a little older than you are, and you feel better this way. Hector says, yes, this is true, but I have another question. You spoke of the darkness that you saw immediately after your death. Was that darkness the product of your soul condition? No, the reason is that I was then already a spirit without a physical body. The spiritual vision is not dependent on sunlight, but it is rather another form of light, which determines the brightness of our environment or of our spirit bodies. And then Hector says, it is divine love? Yes and no. You cannot say this so simply. It is a bit more complicated. I know that the Paget messages state that it is divine love, and in some way it is so, but this is only part of the truth. I will dedicate a separate message to the subject of light in the spirit world. This message is already very long. It is time to say goodbye. A big hug, my dear brother, and may God bless you always. Your brother in the spirit, Judas. So, perhaps I should mention that this is about Jesus, or about Judas after, it's mostly about him passing into the spirit world. I think it's a very revealing story and important and helpful and, meaningful, if I didn't already say that. I think it's very easy to identify with someone like Judas rather than say Jesus, because he is a sinner. And very few of us are at the condition that Jesus is in, or he got to. So I think it's a very meaningful story for that reason, and I'm very inspired by it. So a little more. This is the second message that I want to read to you, recorded on the 6th of September in 2001, and it's called Judas' Experience of the Hells. This is also revealing. It talks about he talks about his emotional state and what it was like in the hells and how he got out. So here we go. My dear Hector, today really has been one of those days. Yes, such are the difficulties to keep up your spirituality on earth, but you are better now, and we may proceed. So here, Hector talks a little bit about some distractions in his day. You can read that if you'd like. I'm going to skip it. Here's Judas. As you will remember, last time I told you how the spirit who accompanied me informed me that the time had come for leaving this entrance place into the spirit world. I had come to understand perfectly well that I no longer lived on earth. I had even arrived at the knowledge that my, quote, physical state, that is, the condition of my spiritual body, was horrible. It was ugly, and I felt very bad. The Spirit took me by my hand and led me to a very different place, at the same speed as he had taken me from the place of my death to the spirit world. Now I want you to describe what you are seeing. So here I think Judas is projecting an image of the surroundings that Judas experienced into the mind of Hector. So Judas is projecting this imagery into Hector's mind. Hector says, it seemed as if I was standing at the top of a mountain or hill. Below, I could see a pretty valley with forests, meadows, springs, and streams. I heard birds singing. It was like a beautiful summer day. Suddenly, everything began to dry off. The green colors turned brown, the leaves fell off the trees, and after a short time, I saw a disastrous landscape. Everything was dry, the earth cracked, a few trunks like skeletons without life. The streams had disappeared, leaving behind only their stony beds. There was no sunshine anymore. Everything seemed dark, like a winter dawn in the northern regions, but without snow, and the silence of death reigned. What a contrast! Here, this is Judas speaking. Well, this is how the place looked like, where the Spirit took me. There he left me, saying that I could find an abandoned house, and that there I would have to live until I had the capacity to leave that place. You think that it was horrible, but I tell you frankly, I didn't find this so bad in the beginning. I met with many spirits in my own condition. I got used to the limited light and the barren landscape, but eventually I almost despaired. The negativity, so much negativity in those spirits. I had always been a cheerful person. I liked to joke, to sing, to dance, but at this place, in this hell, there was no singing or dancing, neither laughter nor a single word of comfort. Everybody took care of his own business. There was not much communication. There was not much to do, nothing to read, nothing to write, only thinking. And there were no children. And my memories came, good and bad memories, but mainly the recollection of my betrayal of the Master and of my suicide. I don't know which one was worse. One day, one of my taciturn neighbors broke his silence and told me that Jesus had visited this place some short time ago. He had told them that there was hope for them, that they could leave this place, and that further on a better world was waiting for them. But very few paid attention to him. When I heard this, I really broke down. Maybe there was hope, yes, but not for me. I had caused Jesus' death, of that luminous spirit, as the neighbor described him to me. What could I do? Nothing but to be resigned. I also found out that there were better places which I could visit, and I did so. I found places very similar to Earth, with more light, much more light than where I lived. And the spirits were better, that is to say, they looked better. They treated me well, in spite of my ugliness. But I simply didn't belong there. I had to return. As I visited these brighter places, we were visited by spirits from the lowest hells. But what a horror! They were disgusting. And with that, I not only refer to their appearance, but to their way of being. With so much negativity, they were furious, wild, and we rejected them. They did not stay with us, but returned to their place where they belonged. Some of my neighbors told me that they had lived in these deeper hells before, and that the place where we live now almost seemed like paradise to them, compared with that place. They described the constant aggressions, physical, verbal, and mental, which these spirits suffered and inflicted, and that their world was even darker than ours, and that they often, almost like some kind of sport, tried to influence mortals, looking for people with certain inclinations and inciting them to commit atrocities. When they had incited some poor fellow whom they had chosen to violate a girl, they hollered at him, "Finish her off, she will denounce you." And when the violator had murdered his victim, they went away screaming and screeching with pleasure. They also tried to satisfy their addictions, clinging to the mind of an alcoholic, of a sexual abuser, of any person with these inclinations. But the satisfaction that they took out of living this second-hand remake of what the mortal experienced was not true satisfaction. They pushed the mortal deeper and deeper into his vice, but they themselves in turn obtained little pleasure. It was a hideous image they painted, and although our small hell vibrated from negativity, it was even worse there. It was like a swamp of perversions. We were lucky being able to live here, they explained to me. Sometimes we received the visit of luminous spirits, but I avoided them, and I hid. I didn't want to fall into worse depressions, seeing them so happy and joyful while I was there in that horrible place. And nothing to do, only thinking, digging in my memories. I went so far as to blame Jesus for my situation. Why had he not acted as I had foreseen it? Was this not his fault? Why didn't he use his powers? But these thoughts didn't bring me relief either. One day, I really got scared to death when I saw Andrew. Yes, the Apostle Andrew, one of my old companions. I wanted to hide, but he spotted me. I expected a verbal attack, insults, but no, Andrew smiled at me. He took me by my hand and led me to a calm place where he spoke to me. He spoke to me of Jesus, of our life together, of the beautiful moments we passed during our journeys through Palestine. He gave me much relief. Afterwards, Andrew often returned, and I waited full of longings for these moments of joy in my sad and negative world. He was so full of love, without reproach, that he made me feel well, very well. I could almost say happy. But on the other hand, my memories hurt more and more. One day, when Andrew was with me, I started to weep, without feeling ashamed and without holding back my emotions. Andrew calmed me. He told me that Jesus had forgiven me already a long time ago, at the very moment of my betrayal, and that it was only my own negativity that kept me prisoner in this horrible and hopeless place. He called my attention to the fact that many spirits arrived here from the deepest hells, and that many left daily. This place, he explained to me, was just a place of transition, and this was also valid for me. He told me how all my friends waited for me in the spheres of light, and that it only depended on me. Oh yes, he really gave me a lot of hope. The day had come when I could get rid of the idea of blaming Jesus for everything, when I could see my guilt, and when I repented. It hurt tremendously. It broke my heart, and I wept for a long time. I isolated myself. I no longer wanted to meet my neighbors, and I spent my days in deep pain. It was then when Andrew, during one of his many visits, drew my attention to the fact that I looked different now. My God, I almost looked as I did then when on earth. Andrew explained to me that you already know what you already know. That is, that my appearance was the reflection of my soul condition, and that my remorse had achieved a great change. You don't belong here anymore, he said. Come on, let's move. Something better is waiting for you. And Andrew guided me to that zone which I had visited earlier, an area of brighter light, somewhat resembling earth conditions, with grass, flowers, trees, simply full of life. Yes, it really looked like paradise, and its inhabitants prepared me a beautiful welcome. At last, I had contact again with human beings, in quotes. It is true, there was also some negativity, but not so much, and I felt strong, positive vibrations. I felt joy, I heard laughter and singing at last, and I felt happy once again. Andrew explained to me that this area was called the Twilight Zone, or the Zone of Dawn, because, although it seemed to me then like the brightest of all lights, it was just a pale shadow of what was awaiting me ahead. This was my new home. I did not live any more in a shack made of crude stone, but in a real house, and I felt happiness and friendship. I couldn't tell you how much time I had spent in hell, but it was a long time, where I could explore every corner of my recollections. That twilight zone, my dear brother, forms part of the earth planes. The great majority of spirits start their endless voyage through the spheres of the spirit world. It is perhaps the most populated place, a place of coming and going, and happy is he who from this place may initiate his progress, without having to first pass through the trauma of hell. It is the place where your brothers live now, and one of them is already preparing to leave it. I think he's talking about Hector's brothers there. We have arrived at a point in my experience that is a good place to make a break. I have spoken much of light and darkness without explaining really what that means. In my next message, I will deal with this very important subject. I will leave you now and give you my blessings. I am happy that you need not pass through that place where I have spent so much time in depression and despair. It is an experience I wouldn't like anyone to have to go through, not to speak of what spirits live in the lower regions. You are sleepy. Sleep now. Tomorrow you write. Don't worry. You won't forget anything of what I have told you. And when you will write, I will be with you and help you. Your brother in Christ, Judas. So there it is. Very beautiful and inspiring story as far as I'm concerned. I've read it a few times now. And I'm very happy to share it with others. I hope it's meaningful for you. I think the thing that is most meaningful for me is the aspect of Judas's redemption. So he actually finds it in himself to deal with his very strong emotions about having betrayed Jesus, and his sudden extreme loneliness and feeling of ostracization for what he did. He didn't think it was going to happen. He didn't think things were going to go down the way they went down. And he kind of thought that he was doing the right thing when he betrayed Jesus. My understanding is that he thought that he was going to encourage Jesus, or like almost demand Jesus to do something and show his powers to the world and make it plain that he was someone of great importance, the Messiah even, perhaps. So I was sitting on the toilet eating some Cheez-Its, and I was thinking about a movie that could be made, and I thought of this story. I think a really good movie that could be made would be about an atheist that doesn't believe in God or life after death, who passes to the spirit world. And if I were to be able to do it or envision the story, I wouldn't make it to where it's kind of like A Christmas Carol, where Scrooge, in a very short, the early part of the film, shows his very extremely frugal and extremely intensely greedy lifestyle. I would draw out the aspects of the life of an atheist that I would single out and show him or her in their lifestyle for maybe a good 40% of the film. Thereafter, they would pass to the spirit world, and they would go through all the experiences and the desire to deny what's going on around them, and maybe even to deny that they had passed, and then talking to people and realizing that not everything they thought was correct, and maybe they want to hold on to atheism for a while and think that this is just part of the spirit reality is just a part of maybe their own creation. I know spirits can do that. They do believe, spirits on the natural love path believe that they are gods themselves, and maybe they have created their reality. So that could be part of it too. But I would always gear stories that I would create towards, the development of a relationship with our parent in heaven. So that's where I would end such a story. Anyway, I hope this has been meaningful for people, and I think I'll end it there. And many blessings in your journey, in your spiritual journey.